how you doing? Anna here from Life Switch with another Mind Health Monday video. This one is a bit chunky, so I'm just going to dive right into it, and we are talking about emotions as signposts. This is a pretty interesting topic. It's one I'm really passionate about, and the idea behind this is that our emotions are good. Our emotions were given to us as indicators and signposts of what's going on in our lives. They are a really good identifier for what is going on under the surface and the situation we find ourselves in. The problem is that we have unpleasant emotions that are quite horrible to feel sometimes, and really beautiful, great emotions that we love to feel. And as a people in general, human beings move away from pain and move towards pleasure. And so that means we're going to avoid feeling unpleasant, stink, horrible emotions in the desire and effort to feel the good stuff. And so typically how we do this is that we numb and we avoid. And typical avoiding or numbing patterns and behaviors could be drinking, they could be smoking, eating, working, exercising, reading a book, reading a movie, getting distracted, kind of getting yourselves into another frame of thinking by jumping into a book or whatever it is. And what we do when we numb and avoid our feelings because they're just a bit too much to feel, they're not very comfortable, is that we actually numb out the good feelings as well. It is impossible to numb out all the unpleasant, horrible emotions but keep the positive ones. We actually dull both of those, and that means that we are not having a great experience in general day-to-day life of emotional health. And one of my favorite authors, researchers, and communicators about this is Brené Brown. And I want to read you a little excerpt that she writes in one of her books called Daring Greatly, about her own journey with uncovering her emotions and no longer numbing and hiding from them. And she says, "I didn't start drinking to drown my sorrows. I just needed something to do with my hands. I drank and smoked to minimize my feelings of vulnerability, to look busy when all the other girls at my table had been asked to dance and I hadn't. I literally just needed something to do." She goes on and says, for many of us, the literal chemical anesthetizing of emotions is just a pleasant, albeit dangerous side effect of behaviors that are more about finding connection, fitting in, and managing anxiety. But she goes on and says, for me, it wasn't just about dance halls, drinking and cigarettes in my youth. It actually got out of hand to the point where it was more about banana bread, chips and guac, emails, work, staying busy, instant worrying, planning, perfectionism, and anything else that would dull those agonizing and anxiety-filled feelings of vulnerability. I really recommend you go and check out her content. She's an incredible help in this world of emotional health, but I think what she writes there is so powerful. A lot of the time, you and I didn't start out destructive patterns because we wanted to be destructive in our way of living. It was that we wanted to feel better. We wanted to avoid feeling maybe vulnerable, maybe alone, maybe embarrassed, whatever it was. And so these small habits begin in an effort to not feel those unpleasant emotions. But what we do is we also numb out all of the beautiful emotions that God created us to experience. And I think it's super important that we are a people who actually feel our feelings. Brené Brown goes on to say that the first antidote to numbing and avoiding patterns is actually sitting with your emotions. And for someone who maybe has been practiced at numbing and avoiding for years, this could take quite a long time. Maybe for some of us, it's a pretty simple process. But when we feel a feeling coming on that we don't want to feel, let's take vulnerability, like she talks about. We don't want to feel vulnerable. We don't want to feel weak or whatever else we might add to that. And so typically we would reach for a drink, reach for food, reach for a movie, reach for pornography, reach for anything else that's going to make us feel better. The challenge is to not reach for anything and to actually feel that feeling. Research actually tells us that that feeling and the intensity of it will pass after 10 seconds. That's a breath or two. All you have to do is sit with that feeling when you're beginning to feel it and just let it wash over you. Take a breath and it won't feel so powerful, and you're going to be amazed that you're still alive because you've gone through that feeling and you are not worse for wear. And then the next thing is actually that we would begin to be curious about why we're feeling that feeling. And if you can begin to connect the dots of, I felt vulnerable when X, Y, and Z happened, then you're beginning to put the puzzle together of what's going on in your emotional and mental health. I always talk about our emotions being like red lights on our dashboards in our cars, and that's a good indicator that something under the hood is not okay and it needs some attention. And when our emotions are flashing at us, it's an indicator that, hey, there's something under the surface that isn't all good, that needs some curiosity and attention towards. And if we would be people that would actually lift up the hood, would look at what's going on, then we're going to be so much more emotionally healthy because we understand why we're feeling what we're feeling. And so that is really my challenge to you this week, is that you would begin to feel your feelings and be curious about them in order to then be able to make better and informed choices around your patterns of behavior, so that you're not numbing and avoiding out all your emotions, but you are experiencing them. And if we would do that, if we'd be emotionally healthy people, if we could feel all the stink feelings and categorize them in their rightful place as not being too powerful, as not being bullying emotions, and then we would also be able to experience all the beautiful, joyful, loving emotions, we're going to encounter that freedom and that fullness of life that Jesus came to give us. And that's what this is all about, that we would live lives that represent what God has already done for us on the cross, and would represent the promise of what will be fulfilled when we're face to face with Jesus in eternity, which is such a beautiful picture. So my prayer for you this week really is that you would actually feel your feelings and then ask yourself why you're feeling them. There's also going to be a couple links to a lot of Brene Brown's content if you want to know more, or just send us a message if you want some support in this. We can either get alongside you or direct you to a professional who's going to be able to offer you the support that maybe you need in this time. But reach out, don't stay isolated, actually talk to someone about what's going on in your world. And I promise, as we do that and as we invite God into that, we encounter this freedom-filled life. Much aroha. See you next Monday for another installment of Mind Health Mondays.